Sri Brhad Bhagavatamrta Part 2. Chapter 6. Text number 1 and 2. Abhishta Labha, the attainment of all desires. I named a disciple Abhishta Dasi. A Russian Mataji lives in New Vrindavan. Abhishta Labha, the attainment of all desires. So it's the name of Radharani. She's Abhishta Da. She likes the name. She said, very creative. Sri Gopal Kumar said, following Narada's instructions, here in Braja, I went to see the many places of Sri Krishna's pastimes. I sang his names, most dear to me. I sang about his pastimes loudly and sweetly. I focused my mind upon them, and I attained such a state of ecstasy and became so emotional that it embarrasses me even to think of it. How then can I describe it to anyone else? Commentary. In this sixth chapter, Gopal Kumar goes to Goloka and meets Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna shows him special mercy, and Gopal Kumar joins the pastimes of that world. Paragraph. The first 5 verses show the good fortune Gopal Kumar gained by following the instructions of Sri Narada. This good fortune will be his means of achieving Goloka. While visiting Sri Vrindavan on earth, Gopal Kumar saw with his own eyes Krishna performing his cowherd pastimes. As a result, Gopal Kumar's mind reached a rare level of ecstasy and manifested such exceptional states as unmada, or divine madness. Text 3. This is way up there. I spent my days and nights in great distress, always crying in a pitiful voice, not knowing whether the practice I had so long been following would lead me to happiness or cast me into an ocean of distress. Commentary. It is difficult for Gopal Kumar to describe his embarrassing state, but because of his special affection for the Mathura Brahmana, he will try to explain it to some extent. Gopal Kumar began his spiritual practice the day he left home as a young boy, and now all his practice seems to be reaching its culmination, but now he is uncertain whether the final result will be happy. Gopal Kumar expresses himself here in a narrative present tense. He says, Na vedmi, literally, I do not know. But this clearly implies that this doubt has been with him for a long time and will continue for some time more. 4. I couldn't tell whether I was living in the flames of a forest fire or in the supreme nectar of the clear, cool waters of Sri Jamuna. 5. Sometimes I thought I had fallen into the hands of some great deceiver. I was always submerged in a vast ocean of misery. Not even a drop of happiness ever touched me. 6. In such a way, I lived in this grove this most attractive ornament of Vrindavan, and one day, while immersed in an ocean of weeping, I fell unconscious. 7. Then the crest jewel of all who are merciful appeared before me with his own hand, a hand cool like nectar and always pleased to hold his flute. He wiped the dust from my limbs. 8. It wasn't easy, but that greatest of cheats playfully stirred me back to consciousness and filled my nostrils with his unique, heady fragrances, which I had never known before. Commentary. Sri Madan Gopal Dev appeared in person before Gopakumar to award him the highest perfection. Gopakumar was in a deep swoon, oblivious to everything around him. But Krishna's presence awakened one of his senses, namely the sense of smell. Because Krishna, the most expert enchanter, knows very well how to stir the senses of even an unconscious person, Gopakumar wants to acknowledge Krishna's omniscience by speaking of him as Mahabhigya Vara, the best of those who know everything. But the ecstasy of love transforms that original idea, and it comes out from his mouth as Mahadruta Vara, or the greatest of cheats. Gopakumar's ecstasy forces him to reason, quote, although Krishna may be now wiping my body with his own hands, soon enough, that same Krishna is just as likely to abandon me. Text 9. Then, seeing his lotus face, I quickly stood up, not knowing what I was doing, my heart filled with joy. I tried to catch hold of a splendid yellow cloth. 10. That king of charming heroes blew his flute in his own playful way and escaped behind me. Suddenly he stepped into a grove, and alas, though I ran about looking, I couldn't find him. 11. He had disappeared. Unable to see him, I fainted and fell into the swift current of the Yamuna. And as it forcefully carried me away, I seemed to regain normal awareness and looked around. Boy. Commentary. Gopakumar says that he, quote, seemed to regain consciousness, labdva iva samgyam, because he had not actually lost his awareness, semicolon. His fainting was not a material disturbance, but an external symptom of ecstasy. His recovery of normal consciousness was also only apparent because the abnormal bewilderment of his prema had still not subsided. 2 verses later, he will describe his, quote, collecting his wits, chittam samadhaya, chittam samadhaya, which shows that now, at this earlier moment, he was still disoriented. 12. I saw myself being transported to another place, along some wonderful path, by a vehicle flying faster than the mind and higher than one could imagine. Good for him. Commentary. Gopakumar couldn't identify the vehicle that took him away, so he refers it to simply as a certain vehicle. Yanena kenapi. He could only say that it was moving upward at a speed greater than that of the mind. The path the vehicle took was also unfamiliar and not able to be identified, so Gopal Kumar could only describe it as, quote, most amazing, unquote. It was utterly different from any road he had ever traveled before. 13. Collecting my wits, Chittam Samadhaya, I was amazed to see I was passing through Vaikuntha Loka and going beyond. I watched with great delight as I passed Ayodhya and other realms. Commentary. Without delay, the vehicle sped past the domain of Lord Narayana, in which Gopakumar had previously resided, and then past other supreme abodes, including Ayodhya and Dwarka. 14. I arrived at the shining world above all others, Sri Goloka, which I had long aspired to reach. Everything there appeared the same as this divine Mathura Mandala of the material world. Commentary. Gopakumar had long desired to attain Goloka, the land where his worshipable Lord Sri Krishna eternally enjoys his pastimes. The Mathura Brahmana, Gopakumar's disciple, lacks the spiritual vision to understand Goloka properly, but to give him some idea of the glories of Goloka, Gopakumar compares it to the transcendental abode where the two of them now sit. Goloka's resemblance to the earthly Gokula is the very reason why Goloka does without the mood of reverence for God's supremacy and displays instead the priceless treasure of super excellent prema. That's why Goloka does without the mood. Okay. Text 15. In that original land of Mathura, I visited Mathura city. I was surprised and happy to see that it resembled the Mathura here on earth. Commentary. Gopakumar was astonished to see that even above Vaikuntha things appeared as in the mortal world. He was pleased to find such advantages for fulfilling his spiritual desires. 16. In that original Mathura, I heard that Kamsa had taken it upon himself to arrest his father and Krishna's parents, Devaki and Vasudeva, and was ruling the kingdom. Commentary. Kamsa needed no introduction, especially to a person who hailed from Mathura city. The Brahmana must at least have read about him in the Puranas and other scriptures. Later in this narration, we will discover how persons like wicked Kamsa, who in the material world had died long ago, could still be active in Sri Goloka. This is, are there demons in Goloka? And yes and no. No and yes. Okay, 17. Out of fear of Kamsa, whose family and friends were enemies of the demigods, the Yadavas dared not enjoy themselves freely. 18. Because of him, they constantly suffered all sorts of affliction. Some of the Yadavas escaped elsewhere, and others took shelter of him. Commentary. Uddhava and other Yadavas went into exile in other districts. Some, like Akrura, became Kamsa's order carriers, as described in Bhagavatam 10:2, 1 through 4. Quote, under the protection of Magadha Raja, or Jarasandha, the powerful Kamsa began persecuting the kings of the Yadu dynasty. In this He had the cooperation of demons like Pralambabhaka, Chanura, Trinavarta, and Agasura, and still others, Mushika, Arishna, Dvidvida, Putana, Keshi, and Denuka, as well as Banasura and Narakasura, and many other demoniac kings on the surface of the earth. Continuing, persecuted by the demoniac kings, the Yadavas left their own kingdom and entered various others, like those of the Kurus, Panchalas, Kaikayas, Shalvas, Vidarbhas, and Nishadhas, and the Videhas and Koshalas. Some of the Yadavas, however, began to follow Kamsa's principles and act in his service. Paragraph. The Supreme Lord arranges for his pleasure pastimes to occur in Goloka, just as on earth. Were this not so, the hearts of his unalloyed devotees would not be fully satisfied. And this is hinting again that in Goloka, so in Goloka, the language Goloka means upper Goloka, and Gokula means earthly Gokula. So his Lord arranges for his pleasure pastimes to occur in Goloka, just as on earth. So Krishna, the message we're going to hear coming up is Krishna derives pleasure by smashing Kamsa. And so he's there in Goloka. And it's an interesting, very interesting discussion. He doesn't reside there, but by Yogamaya manifests him from time to time. That's the rationale, that's the explanation that Shivaram has come up with, based on Brhad Bhagavatamrta, that speaks differently than what we're accustomed to hearing. From Brahma Samhita, Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Prabhupada, and he speaks differently. Okay, text 19. I too was afraid of Kamsa, so as soon as I finished bathing in Vishranti Ghat, I hurriedly left Mathura and went to glorious Vrindavan. Commentary is very good for Gopal Kumar that he was already assuming the character of a Golokavasi, and that would lead him to his final perfection, 2021. In that realm, beyond the realm of all the demigods, planetary rulers, and personal attendants of the Supreme Lord, I saw that life was going on just as here in the Aryavarta country. Aryavata, so Varta country in Bharatvarsha on earth. The sun was rising, and other natural events were taking place every day in the sky. And on the land, the people were speaking and behaving the same way as here. I was stunned by astonishment, extreme astonishment, and immersed in an ocean of ecstatic rasa. Commentary. Demigods like Surya and Chandra, planetary rulers like Indra and Brahma, and even associates of Lord Narayana like Sri Garuda cannot enter Goloka. Gopal Kumar, preparing his student for descriptions of life there, now gives him a glimpse of how Goloka resembles Vrindavan on earth. Gopal Kumar saw for himself that the environment and culture of Goloka were just like those of the Ayavarta, north central India, refined in civilization, where Brajabhumi is located. What he saw in the sky, Divyam, and on the ground, Bhomim, could hardly be distinguished from the common experience of life on earth. This sight amazed him. How he could now perceive the spiritual reality of rasa as something tangible. And the ecstasy of that rasa at once filled his heart and overflowed and left him swimming in an ocean of the nectar of devotion. 22. After a few moments, I saw some men who might have been cowherds wandering in the forest with some ladies, advanced in years, and also wearing cowherd dress, who were picking flowers. Commentary. Gopakumar says that the men appeared, quote, as if cowherds, or Gopan Iva. They certainly could not have been ordinary cowherds of the material world, nor could he assume that the old women he saw were what they appeared. They were dressed as cowherd women, but what they actually were, Gopakumar leaves for his student to find out later. The younger gopis were not there picking flowers, either because their feelings of separation from Krishna disenabled them from such useful service, or else because they were not allowed to leave the cowherd village. In any case, Gopakumar saw clearly that even the old people of Goloka had very special love for the Supreme Lord, text 23. The people there were different from anyone I had ever seen. Someone, it appeared, had stolen the wealth of their hearts and left them helpless in love with him. Commentary. Since the beauty and good character of Goloka's people were not to be found anywhere else, Gopakumar could hardly think of an adequate metaphor by which these people could be described. They seemed distracted, as if someone had stolen their hearts. The actual cause of this strange behavior was that they suffered from divine madness. They seemed distraught because the thief had stolen the treasure of their hearts. Or, at least, that was how things appeared on the surface. Vyakula Iva, because Gopakumar had just been introduced to life in Goloka, he preferred to hold off on making a final judgment. 24. And look how much more we have to go. Simply by seeing them, I felt the same kind of loving affection. Trying hard, I composed myself and respectfully asked them the following questions. Commentary. The mere sight of these devotees made Gopakumar feel the same turbulent feelings they did. He managed to bring himself back to a condition almost sober, dire yam iva ashritya, but not completely sober, otherwise he wouldn't have asked questions he could already answer. 25. Quote, "O good people, you are served by a happiness so vast that the great sages can't obtain it even in dreams. You are reservoirs of the mercy of the Lord, the husband of the goddess of fortune, mercy for which his loving devotees always pray." Commentary. Before placing his questions, Gopakumar addresses the Golokavasis in this way because He cannot comprehend how the hearts of such supremely fortunate devotees could be disturbed. The kind of happiness these pure souls know cannot be imagined by sages fixed in the conception of Brahman. For the devotees of Goloka are much greater than liberated sages, and even greater than the servants of the Lord of Vaikuntha, who love Lord Narayan with pure intent. Though the devotees of Narayana admire and pray for the same mercy bestowed upon the Golokavasis, they never actually obtain it. 26. Paramadinam. Please, please, look with kindness upon this most wretched person who has come to you for shelter. Tell me, who is the king of this region? Where is his residence? Which road leads there? 27. Dear, dear, most fortunate people, please be merciful to me, who am asking you with mournful cries. Please give me some answer, O faithful devotees, if even only by gesture. Commentary. Not receiving an answer, Gopakumar first guesses that perhaps the Golokavasis are nearly deaf. He therefore repeats his address more distinctly, saying louder, Bo, Bo, dear people, dear people. He then realizes that they are not deaf, but simply paying no attention to him. So he tries to impress on them the sincerity of his request. He praises them as Danya, most fortunate, and Suvrata, faithful followers of regulated principles. And if these devotees are following a vow of silence, at least they can answer him by hand signals. 28. Oh, please hear the words of this tormented soul. Alas, you must be under the spell of that clever cheat. Dur Tasya, the deceiver. Commentary. Even after Gopal Kumar's fervent plea, the Golokavasis didn't respond. They didn't even look at him. But Gopal Kumar, rather than become angry with them for their neglect, placed the blame on the enchanting Krishna, who, after all, had deceived Gopal Kumar just as he had them. Krishna is indeed the most expert cheat, semicolon. Only he, Tasyaiva, could bewilder them like this and no one else. And one more verse, 29, because he's going to, next, at 30, he's going to approach some other people. In this way, I moved here and there, anxiously questioning each person I met, and as I made my way forward, I came to the pasturing grounds of the cowherds. Commentary. The anxiety Gopakumar felt upon his arrival in Goloka was actually a symptom of dainya, the transcendental, unconditional humility that is the most important prerequisite for gaining eternal residence in Goloka. Like this humility theme keeps appearing for a good reason. For a good reason. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sanatana Goswami ki jai.